All right, here we go. It is 5 o'clock. It's so nice to see people here in the chambers with us this evening, with this, I think, warmest day or group of days we've had in a long, long time. Feels like a reprieve, and great to see my colleagues. So I'm going to call to order this Committee of the Whole meeting for the Kalamazoo City Commission for Monday, February 16th, 2026. The first order of business is roll call. Clerk Borley.
Commissioner Hess.
Present.
Commissioner Hoffman. Commissioner Cradle.
Present.
Commissioner Slaby.
Present.
Commissioner Wilson.
Present.
Vice Mayor Duncan.
Here.
Mayor Anderson.
Here. Thank you, Clerk Borling. Commissioners, may I have a motion to excuse Commissioner Hoffman?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Hess, supported by Vice Mayor Duncan. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? All right, motion passes. Just a little announcement here before we get started. We are honored this evening to have Assistant City Attorney Sarah Van Hefty here with us. Thank you for joining us. Attorney Leal's out of the office. I think he had attending a family event, funeral, maybe down in Texas. So welcome. Nice to have you here. And we appreciate sharing some time with you. I know you're going to be here for our business meeting as well. Next, communications. Any communications, Manager Hankins?
Not at this time.
All right, thank you. Now is the opportunity for public comments for our Committee of the Whole meeting. Just a reminder that public comments at the Committee of the Whole are limited to 2 minutes on any topic of your choosing. Please come forward now, state your name, whether you live in the city.
Hello, my name is Elise Albertson. I live in the Millwood neighborhood. Do I have to be specific? So my name is Elise Albertson, and I suggest that the streetlights in Kalamazoo's low traffic areas be switched to motion censored lights. During bird migrations, which is typically from March to June and August to November, streetlights contribute significantly to the distractions that lead birds to their death. The false source of light messes with their sense of time and location, and the complications with migration can in turn affect every other part of their life, such as breeding. Utilizing motion-censored lights would mean that the streetlights wouldn't always have to be on, which would save energy in the low-traffic areas they would be implemented in. It would also reduce the carbon footprint of the city by using less carbon-reliant energy. We, in turn, reduce the overall carbon emissions of Kalamazoo, which makes motion-censored lights more environmentally friendly and sustainable. Another advantage is that they require less replacements than traditional lighting sources. While traditional streetlights have shorter lifespans, motion-censored lighting often uses LED technology, which has longer lifespans. Technology like this has already been implemented in some large cities like Los Angeles and has been successful in its goal of providing light when it's needed and saving energy when it's not. All these reasons together prove that over time, despite the higher initial cost of these lights, they will become more cost-effective for the city of Kalamazoo and in turn save lives of thousands of birds. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, please.
Edward Nickerson. I live in the city of Kalamazoo. I think I've seen one of you guys up there in New York, but I could be wrong. They built I think it's like a duplex or whatever over on North in Church, I think it is, several years back. And they dug down about only so far where they were going to lay the foundation. I took somebody down there with me and I said, "Watch this." And I stuck a shovel down in the ground about a fraction of an inch and went right into rotting metal and everything else. They used to bury stuff all over the place in Kalamazoo. How did this get by the contractors and the city inspectors? And how could they do such a thing? Maybe you need to hire somebody like me in order to teach them how to do their jobs properly. So now you got a place built on a dump. And they talk about the superbug. It's like a fungus, and it's coming this way. Well, about over a year ago, they sprayed my apartment with a fungus that leaves white spots just like what they're talking about is coming this way. Are they for sure it's not already here? And by the way, are you related to somebody named Bill Anderson?
Your time is up. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jody Dozeman. I live in the city of Kalamazoo. I had a friend come over, works in the cattle slaughterhouse, and I was just wondering, some ideas came to mind, and I thought, well, these cattle aren't really passing over. I mean, if they're being slaughtered, and on TV they've showed terrible things being done, plows scaring the cattle. That makes them sick. That makes them sick before the slaughter. I was hoping I could get in, find out how to remodel the place, and this is what I'm going to ask. Web paging. I need to know how to make a web page. Do you have any little envelopes that you put interest people into groups where they could connect with each other and maybe come up with some ideas for future something to do together to get their ideas to bloom? Anyway, so I'm hoping somehow, somewhere, I had someone that's a computer tech, but I got a lease violation for him being there and his service dog being there. I don't understand what happened. It's really something uncalled for. He's got his papers. He's, there's privileges. My lease started over. I'm on a month-to-month lease. It's a little tight there now, so I'm not too sure how much longer I'll be there, but it'd be nice to find someone that had the same interest or could bloom with me rebuilding the slaughterhouse or making it so that they can pass over without being beat up or scared and got.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hi, Commissioners. I'm Margaret Wilson. I live in the city. I was really excited to come today and give you guys a big cheerleading, rah-rah, great job for your consent item in the 7 o'clock meeting approving the Safe Routes to School contract with MDOT. Until I learned what the details of the changes for the Merrill Street crossing were, And I'm coming with a desperate plea to please take some more public input and coordinate with the school and refer to the original plan as developed by Western when implementing the changes or not to that crossing, because the plan that is proposed is not safe. And I'm happy to talk with any of you about my concerns in detail. There's no way that I'll fit it into 2 minutes. I have a couple of people that I kind of strong-armed into coming and being a cheerleader for the next meeting. So there'll be a few of us. You know, great job on the Winchell sidewalk for the safe routes to school, but the sidewalk crossing changes for the Merrill Street crossing are not going to be safe. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the chambers who'd like to take advantage of the public comment period? Okay, the public comment period is closed. Thanks to all who came and took advantage of the public comment period. Next, for the Committee of the Whole agenda is our work of the evening. Manager Hankins.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a couple of presentations for you today. The first is the Development of Housing Investment Briefing with the Peregrine Peninsula. This is a briefing on the Peregrine Peninsula Development and Housing Incentive Request. This presentation will provide an overview of the project and the brownfield plan, which is on the Commission's business meeting agenda for tonight. And so with that, I believe we have Jamie McCarthy here with our development manager.
Welcome, Ms. McCarthy. Good to see you.
Well, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, and thank you, City Manager Hankins, for introducing us. I'm here to talk about, as you mentioned, actually 2 items. I'm going to start by giving you a purpose of this briefing, just to talk a bit about how staff bring forward these development and housing incentive projects, to talk about how the city incentives stack up and how we come and talk about those before these items land on your agenda. So I'll talk a little bit about what to expect and how we lay these out before you get to vote on them. And then we'll get into the Peregrine Peninsula project, give you some details about those, talk about those incentives, and allow you to ask some questions. So just to start off, I know some of you have been with the commission for a little while. We've been doing this for a couple of projects now, so some of this may be familiar, but you're going to see sort of this consistent briefing that we're bringing forward. I'm going to introduce a few new graphics that you're going to start to see us integrating into these presentations, but the idea here is just to give you an orientation of the project. And let you really see the incentives. Oftentimes those are layered together in some requests that these projects are bringing forward, and I want to spend some time explaining those to you. And then also we're going to be showing you how these really align with multiple community benefits and certain plans or goals that we have as a community, and we'll show you those consistently as well. You're also going to see how these tie into different goals, whether those be economic outcomes that we're seeking together as a city. If these projects have housing tied to them, what affordability levels or income levels those are tied to, who they'll serve, and we'll lay out some of that information as well. And then the really big piece here is to give you an idea as much as we can how these are going to time out, where we think these multiple asks or these multiple actions will land on your agenda. As you know, some of these requests take multiple hearings, or they're introduced to you multiple times on your agenda. And so the idea here is to try and consolidate what used to be multiple presentations that would come forward to you, or multiple staff who are bringing you different bits of information, and trying to bring that to you more comprehensively when we can, and then laying out the steps and trying to be efficient with your time. However, this one you're going to see actually came to you last spring and summer, and now we're finally coming back and really bookending this with the brownfield plan. So sometimes we will, as much as we try, have to kind of stretch these out over longer time frames. And then last, this is an opportunity for you to ask questions and have a little bit more of an in-depth conversation about a project before you take action on that item. So for this evening, really the key here is going to be the brownfield plan that's coming before you on your business agenda this evening. I just wanted, before we got started on this project, to talk again about housing incentives and give you just a little bit of context to ground us this evening. And I know you've been seeing this graphic, but just to point out in particular how the tools in our toolbox can help us meet some of our collective goals for increasing housing stock across the city at all housing or all income levels. We today are going to be talking about how we're using those tools, and this project is leveraging tools to help us get more infill housing and to make housing a bit more affordable. And this project in particular is using brownfield TIF incentives and tax abatement, and that's the neighborhood enterprise zone abatement. We'll talk about that in a moment. I also wanted to show you some of the most common incentives that you're going to see in the toolkit. And this is one of those graphics or one of those keys that you're going to start seeing a little bit more in the presentations that we use. And so I also wanted to give you some definitions here. Today we're going to be talking about the two at the top. But just to give you an idea of how these work, in particular that tax increment financing is new taxes that are generated by a project that get reinvested into that project. So if the project doesn't happen, the financing doesn't get created. So the project must happen and it self-funds and then it gets invested back into the project. So something to remember when we're talking about the incentives tied to these particular projects. A tax abatement is an actual tax reduction. It's a temporary tax reduction. We're relying on a state statute typically, so that's giving us the framework in how you all can approve that length or that depth of usually a partial tax reduction. And it's really a short-term incentive to encourage investment whereby a project is not usually feasible without that temporary tax relief. And then we offer loans at the city, and we're very much more limited in the grant area. We all know there's never enough grant dollars to go around, but loans, of course, are that upfront capital that must be repaid. We have Housing Development Fund grants. We have some economic incentive grants, just to name a couple as an example. Those usually have some really favorable terms, and they're usually really small gap financing. So we have the bigger bank loan that's coming in from the private side, some equity that the developer themselves are putting into the deal, and then probably a small gap financing from the public. And then again, those grants, those are highly sought after. They do not require repayment. They're very limited. They're usually very competitive, and they usually have to have that public outcome, usually high public outcome. There's usually eligibility criteria that have to be tied to them. Oftentimes they're passed through maybe from a state or a federal program that we can usually unlock through our public entity and offer those through to projects. So we're going to try to show these and use this throughout all of our presentations here as we give these briefings moving forward. Okay. With that, I want to get into this project in particular, and I really am going to be talking a lot about the brownfield side of things. This project is located downtown. It is a single parcel, and it's a rehab of a historic building, one of the oldest buildings in the city of Kalamazoo. And they are really looking at a conversion of the second and the third floor here. This is the Peninsula building. It's located here on East Michigan and Portage Street, right on sort of that main corridor in our heart of our downtown. This opportunity is before us, really unfortunately because of a fire that happened in the building and the fire suppression system that saved the building, but is, because of the damage that was created by all of the water, really required a gut of much of the building. And so it did present this opportunity whereby they're redoing the second and the third floors. And that was previously office that was really underutilized, and then 3 really large apartments. And so being able to relook at this from a fresh perspective, developer decided this really could be converted into smaller apartment units, really increasing that density and taking advantage of the new housing that's needed and much more dense housing that's needed all throughout the city, but especially downtown. So what we're gaining are 11 new residential units. They're focusing in on that workforce affordability level, and what we're getting out of this because of some state incentives and because of the local incentives are 3 affordable units at 60% of area median income. Those will be set in place for 5 years, and then 2 units at 80% AMI for 10 years. In addition to that, we know there's an economic impact as well. We have new residents, more residents because of the increase in units. They're being able to support more of our downtown businesses. And then we, with this project, are seeing with the rehab, the reopening of that restaurant on the first floor. I just wanted to tie this into some plans that we know are out there. So our community housing plan does call for, it's a little bit small to see here, but you have a packet in front of you. In the urban core where we're located, we are looking at, over the next 6 years, a need for 400 new low and mid-rise apartment units. And so this is, just ticking us toward that need. As we know, there's a great need for those units all throughout. A total of 1,200 in the entire county, but 400 of those were targeted for the urban core, so that's that downtown area of Kalamazoo. Also from our strategic vision, we have the economic vitality goals, and so we have an over $3.25 million private investment that we're leveraging from this project and that support of that downtown district and the businesses. I wanted to get a little bit more into these incentives. So we have the brownfield housing TIF itself. This was brought forward to both the Downtown Economic Growth Authority and our Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. They have recommended this forward for a total request of $756,284. That would be supporting it for a brownfield plan over 25 years. That's really helping to cover those hard and soft costs of the rehab, the demolition, interior demolition, and the rehab itself. This is a supporting plan, so the city and the Brownfield Authority are able to collect an administrative fee. That means the cost to administer the plan, to pay for the annual reimbursements, to do the reporting to the state, and then to ensure that there's all of the reporting and the backup documentation to make sure those units remain affordable. Over the commitment that was made, that all gets, all that staffing, all that cost to the city gets reimbursed through the plan itself. We estimate that to be, just under that $74,000 over the life of the plan. And then we also see an increase in tax base over the 25-year life of this plan. So right now, the property as is just over $590,000 in tax base. After the end of this plan, it will be over $1 million in tax base because of the investment. And then I also wanted to point out that other tax abatement, this was one that the City Commission approved the certificate in May of 2025. This was a tax certificate, a tax abatement that freezes half of the taxes on the property. You can see the value that we've estimated generally over the life of that certificate, which is about 15 years, is just over $200,000 of additional incentive to the project to help it with its feasibility. And just so you know, there are some additional details about the brownfield plan in your packet for this evening as well. Okay, So just to get you some timelines here, I did want to mention that May, NEZ was approved last May, so that already came forward to the commission, but this is really that bookend. Those tools really function together, but they were brought forward separately for this project. The Brownfield Authority held a public hearing on the Brownfield plan in January, and now that's coming forward to you on your business meeting this evening. And with that, I will open it up to any questions.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Questions, commissioners? Commissioner Hess.
Sure. Jamie, thank you for being here and for bringing this forward to us. Hey, so the restaurant, is that going to continue at Saugatuck Brewing, or is that been sold? Will it be redone? And appreciate 11 units above that. That's just awesome.
Yeah, so this project and the financing really focuses on the 2 upper floors in the housing. However, we were told that the restaurant opens as sort of part of the whole rehab. I don't have an answer on who's operating that new restaurant, but I heard it isn't going to be a new operator there.
Thank you. Other questions, commissioners? Commissioner Cradle.
Sure. Thanks again for being here today. Wanted to just clarify a question for the, what slide was it here? Was the increase in tax base, that 590 to slightly over $1 million, that's in the same 25-year period, if I understand correctly?
Yes.
Great. And then in terms of that TIF recapture, if I understand correctly, the purposes with that would be predominantly brownfield plan, I think it was asbestos remediation, and then also it allows, because of the damage that had occurred to the facility, it was kind of a cool creative opportunity to use that for some of the demolition costs related to that as well, if I understand correctly.
Yes, your question is what are the different activities that $750,000 will be used for? Yes, so I have the list here. That's the demolition cost for, the cleanup of the interior of the building. There's asbestos abatement. There's a really minor amount of cost to that. There is some infrastructure improvements, again, minor to the interior and connections to the building. Some site preparation. A lot of what the state qualifies as like qualified rehabilitation of the structure. So this is some interior, some sort of selective interior improvements, but especially bringing it back up to like modern building codes and some of the like security and safety sort of features of the building. That's really the bulk of some of the interior cost, and then some of the soft costs with some of the engineering design kind of costs. Those are more minor costs as well, but.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's a really unfortunate circumstances in which it finds itself, but it's great to see some creative use to help get over that barrier, I guess, with the redevelopment. And that's a really pretty integral peninsula, if you will, to our downtown. And so it's neat to see that we're able to bring that back and then have multifunction, both commercial and residential. So thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Cradle. Other questions, commissioners? Just a couple for me then. A little more general here. So could you just remind us the interaction between the NEZ and the TIF? Because the NEZ actually, with the tax abatement, limits that TIF collection during that time, right? So do you want to talk just a little bit about that, how those things interact?
Yes. So I'm actually going to go back to my definitions. Okay. So if our tax increment financing is helping us to use dollars that are created by increasing taxes, and we get to reinvest those back into the project, but I'm telling you that we're giving them a tax break or a tax reduction for a certain period of time, those feel counter to each other. And so in this case, when we use those two tools together, we're almost really stacking those two if you think about those in sequence. So when we look at a pro forma, we look at some of the financials of this project, it's really in years 1 through 15 where the tax abatement comes into play, and we're helping the project get some more cash flow by reducing their tax burden. It's helping them take on debt and be able to help the project out in those years. And that's why we get this really long brownfield plan, because the brownfield plan isn't really doing much. We're not really capturing many taxes. There aren't a whole lot of taxes generated and helping out the project. So the brownfield plan is almost that last 10 years, if you will, where the taxes will jump way up. The Brownfield Authority can capture some, but not all. Debt millages, certain millages still continue to flow through and help those taxing jurisdictions, but the Brownfield Authority can capture some of those, and the authority will pay those back into the project to help offset those costs that have been, they will have been borrowed. This project will have to borrow and pay their loan on those for that 15 years, and then they'll pay those back with the brownfield TIF. But we do look at a 25-year pro forma for a project to ensure that this project really does need the public financing piece that it otherwise would not happen. So this is two incentives that happen sequentially. They're not really happening at the same time.
Right. So just remind us, how long is the brownfield housing TIF been around? It's a kind of a new invention in the last few years, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's newer that we can use the TIF incentive this way. It's been around for a little over two and a half years now. It was changes made to the state statute by the state legislature and the governor. And it's really, put it on the top of the list because I think it's an incentive you're going to see coming forward pretty often. It's one of the most popular incentives we're using in the state of Michigan right now. It was, created really knowing that housing's a priority, there's a critical shortage, and that this is one of those tools that I think we, at the state level, understood could be really valuable to increasing housing in the state.
Right. Appreciate that information. Just also, just a reminder for us here, this was not a specific site NEZ. This was a broader area NEZ that we passed back in May of 2025. So it incorporates other properties, some of whom are taking advantage of the NEZ or have yet in this district, and others that haven't and may never. But in this given area, it's a broader area NEZ we created.
That's correct. It's larger than this particular site, and then if a project makes an investment that kind of meets the minimum criteria, they too could come forward with this request for a certificate to the commission and could be eligible.
Thank you. And then just one thing I wanted to just kind of make sure that we reinforce is oftentimes maybe when we're out in the community, we will hear, well, why doesn't the city give a tax break for this? Or why doesn't the city give a tax break for that? Or my taxes are too high. Can't you give me a tax break here, in my house where I live? Why are you giving tax breaks to new developments? What gives us the power to provide tax breaks, and how limiting is that? I guess, not to ask too complicated a question, but.
Yeah, it's a great question. All of these incentives that we'll bring forward, but especially the tax abatements, are authorized under state statute. So it's really the state legislature, the state that is enacting different state statutes. These are specific state exemptions. They run the gamut of, housing to nonprofit, there's a variety, to commercial, there's a variety of them. But it's a limited list, and they are connected to public acts, to statutes, and it's the state tax commission that then, oftentimes, if you have an ability to approve them here locally, and then that application goes on to the state to do the final approval.
So it is really the overarching authority of the state, which gives us, under the Home Rule City Act and other statutes, the ability to take advantage of providing some tax breaks. It's just not something we can decide to do on our own here in Kalamazoo, outside of any authority that's given to us through these. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions on this, Commissioners? All right, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right.
Manager Hankins.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, this will be on your agenda tonight for consideration. Our second presentation, Justin Gish, our sustainability planner, and Chris Broadbent, solid waste coordinator. They're going to give us information on the city sustainability program and the progress on net zero. I think we like to try to give these updates every year or so, is what my understanding is. So they're going to go over some high-level information here for us today.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Yeah, welcome. Good to see you back again.
Yeah, thank you. Yep, City Manager Hankins explained what I'm going to talk about very well. We've done this before. I get kind of excited with some of the technical stuff, so just ask questions. I don't know, kind of flag me down or wag me down if I'm not making any sense. So this is Community Sustainability Plan update broadly with a specific focus on the net zero goals, which is one of the most important components of that sustainability plan. And then Chris Broadbent behind me will start talking about materials management and how much stuff we're collecting and the new programs that we have going on in the city. So, we're here, this is just an information session. I'm not necessarily asking anything. I hope that the information provided helps guide you in some of your decisions later on, but right now it's purely informational, kind of where we're at, what we're doing, and what we could do better. The agenda here, pretty straightforward. Give you updates on some sustainability initiatives in 2025. Give you the 2024 numbers. The way my kind of system works, the 2025 numbers aren't released until May, so it's a little wonky, but these are new numbers you haven't heard before. And then Chris will give an overview of the recycling and composting programs. And then some background here. So this commission declared a climate emergency in 2019, which spurred the creation of a community sustainability plan. That plan was adopted by this commission in 2022. 2023, I was hired, the sustainability planner was hired, and we came up with our first baseline. So we knew where we were at if we're going to get to net zero. In 2024, the city of Kalamazoo enrolled in Consumer Energy's large energy renewable program, and I have some graphs that show you the impact of that. But that doesn't start until 2028. So there's plenty of work to do before we enroll in that program. The Community Sustainability Plan really aligns well with the Master Plan 2025, and it'll align well with 2035 here. All those dots show where these two plans intersect. So everything we're doing, it's on the up and up. The plan is kind of structured in themes, goals, strategies, and actions. The themes here are accessible network, affordable, efficient city, healthy, prepared community, and green circular economy. So those are the themes, those are the areas we're working in, and the goals are underneath there, and kind of goals are, what we need to accomplish to meet those, what's laid out in the themes, and then we have strategies and actions, which are what we need to do to reach those goals. So it's kind of, works its way up. Running through these real quick. Last year, the city held a rain barrel and composter sale, so we're encouraging citizens to conserve resources there. The city worked with Southwest Mission Planning Commission on provided input for the Kalamazoo River Urban Wildlife Corridor Project, which focuses on the river and how we can get folks to use the river and protect the river, that river being the Kalamazoo River. Parks and Rec worked on dredging Portage Creek and Millam to expand trout habitat. We changed from No Mow May to Buzz in the Zoo last year, which was pretty successful, expanding kind of citizens' understanding of how to care for the natural world and stewardship of their own private properties, throughout the year, not just focusing on kind of May. We held invasive species removal events. So this is citizen polls. We're inviting citizens to come down, learn about invasive species, how to mitigate them on public property, with the goal of them going back to their private property and mitigating the species there. We have an iNaturalist invasive species program where anyone can take pictures of an invasive species, upload it to the program, and then I can map that out and I can see where the invasive species are in the city. In our office, Nolan worked on a relief at Oakwood neighborhood where they planted trees, learned about tree care in that particular neighborhood, updated approved tree planting guidelines, so we're removing what are now kind of invasive species, invasive with silver maples, but still tree species you don't necessarily want in an urban environment. Then we're doing better management of city-owned wellheads. And I will say here too, I'm reporting a lot of this stuff. A lot of this stuff is citywide. So Director McVeary, Director McBaker, Ashton, Teresa, Wendy White, and Chris Broadbent here. Everyone's kind of pulling together on this. So I want to make sure everyone gets credit there. So one of the goals, reduce community waste. We're working on placing compost tumblers in community gardens. We have those tumblers at the NACD, Parkview Hills, West Main Hill, and Edison community gardens. We place commercial composting bins in neighborhood and central sites. So the city of Kalamazoo now has, it's essentially municipal composting drop-off. Anyone in the city can use it. There's sites in neighborhoods and then a central site at Stockbridge. So any of your compostable material, any organic material, meats, fats, oils, stuff you generally don't want to put in those tumblers that we had given out, or compost in your backyard can go in those bins. They get picked up once a week and they get composted. So reducing landfill emissions that way, and trips or organic materials in the landfills. And we're working to expand the EPS foam events. We just had one on Saturday. Again, we're probably averaging about 400 people at those events, collecting about 2 semi-trailers full of EPS foam, countless cardboards. Chris will have the numbers. I don't want to spoil his game there. So we're kind of on the renewable energy front. The City of Kalamazoo achieved SolSmart Bronze designation. SolSmart is a national organization that works with communities to make sure that their zoning and permitting is up to snuff for solar. So we hit bronze there. We'll continue to work silver and gold in the future, but you got a good base. We held 2 Solarize events. So Solarize events are these bulk buying programs where a solar installer comes to town. You get 30 interested residents or citizens to work with that solar installer, and they'll cut the cost a little bit. So city worked to organize that. 14 people signed up. 33 kilowatts of solar energy is going on the grid because of that. And then the city enrolled in the Consumers Energy Large Scale User Program. Just more on the renewable energy front. Public Safety Station number 2 is LEED certified. We got to kind of tout that. And then we're improving and expanding recycling at city facilities. So Chris is working really hard on, recycling everything from K-cup pods to, what else? Batteries there. Run the gamut there. So in the sustainability plan, there are key performance indicators. Give an update on some of those. So KP1, I think, is pretty impressive here. Might be kind of small, but I think you have theirs. So KP1 wants to see a trend up in active transportation miles. So you can see here, this is information I get from Google EIE, which is a site that I use that provides this sustainability information to sustainability professionals like myself. On foot traffic is up 14%. From 2022 to 2023, and then 4% from 2023 to 2022. So that's increasing. At the same time, you have vehicle miles traveled decreasing, and the same with bike travel. It's up 24% and then 4%. So correlation, causation, I can't directly tie this to our Safe Streets for All or any of the initiatives that we've done in the city, but I think that inference would not be too off the mark. Numbers are fun here too. You can see 2022, middle of COVID, and car transportation dropped 27%, and then jumped right back up in 2021. That information's in there. I'm happy to talk about it at some other time. All right, so, and I know that we're running up against it, and Chris is going to want to talk. But so the progress to net zero. So in that goal, the city needs to get to net zero carbon emissions by 2050. So what have we done? Quite a lot, actually. So I'm going to talk about 2 types of emissions. So when I do my work, I categorize emissions by scope 1, 2, and 3. Scope 1 emissions are emissions that we are directly responsible for burning natural gas in our homes and our cars. And scope 2 is emissions that are committed on our behalf. So turning on a light switch, right? Someone has to make that, but they wouldn't do it if you didn't ask for it. All right, so here's the total emissions for the last 3 years of scope 1 and 2 for the city. So the first number there, 35,000. That was the baseline year, or the year that I started, 2022. It climbed up to 36,000 and has leveled off a little bit and dropped down to 36,467. So we saw a sharp increase, and we'll kind of look at the reasons for that and kind of see a leveling. And we'll go through all these categories. So we did see an improvement in streetlights and traffic signals. This is mostly due to the LED-ification of streetlights and traffic signals. So you see a 500 metric ton reduction. And I guess I'll take a step back here. So these numbers are all in metric tons of CO2e, and CO2e is carbon dioxide equivalent. So that is, carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, and methane. So it's a standardization of those 3 gases, which have different warming potentials. You can talk to me after this if you really want to get more into that. But that's where we're at, right? So, and then a metric ton of CO2e is hard to kind of wrap your head around, but imagine a basketball the size of a house. That's 1 metric ton of CO2e. So we're putting out 35,000 of those. It's not just us, though. All right, so buildings, facilities, we saw a large drop. This drop is kind of artificial. So in 2022, that number was artificially high. So we had buildings on the roll that year that we no longer have, right? So 322 Stockbridge was part of that. So it's not sustainable to think that we're going to see this drop because we achieved that drop by tearing down or getting rid of buildings. Unless the city, gets rid of a building every year, we won't see a kind of a drop like that. And so here's where we start to see the increases. So vehicle fleet, it's increased, 400 metric tons, since 2022. And again, sustainability, the way I do it and the way I think it should be done is very pragmatic. This doesn't mean that we should stop doing things. And looking at this data, you can tell the story too that the city is doing more things for folks. We're driving more miles. There's more street or more cars out there doing things. But is there a way that we could kind of do something better? And that's kind of the question that I ask and I wrestle with. And then energy use has increased at the wastewater treatment plant. And again, that's not because we're wasting more energy. It's because we're cleaning more water, right? It's towns around us, and the city increases the inflow that goes to that plant. We need more energy to do that stuff. Percent changes real quick. So again, 22% decrease in streetlights and traffic signals, 5% buildings and facilities decrease. I don't see that decreasing again. It's probably going to increase. Vehicle fleets increased 14%, water and wastewaters increased 5%. Some of the successes, this is a really impressive success. Again, Director Baker in Public Services kind of ran with this one. So we switched to biodiesel. So the city now currently uses gasoline, diesel, and biodiesel in their vehicle fleet. The switch to biodiesel saved 27 metric tons. And again, what does that mean? Who cares? It's equivalent to planting 4,580 trees if those trees live for 10 years. So this has definitely helped our numbers. I played around with a graph here, and now we can see what it would look like if we never made the switch to biodiesel. So that'd be the blue line there. We'd be in the 900s and 800s. But with the switch to biodiesel, our vehicle fleet emissions are dropping, and that'll continue to drop as we increase the amount of biodiesel in our mix. Right now it's 11%, soon it'll be 14%, and then it'll start at 20%. So you can see, if we keep the use the same, we'll be doing pretty good there with the vehicle numbers. Again, gasoline, so there's one of our CPED vehicles. That's where we see the biggest increase from 19%. And again, staff are driving more miles. They're doing more things. Could they do those things in an electric vehicle? Probably. And then building emissions, again, the declines related to buildings no longer under the city's purview. And if you just kind of pick on one building, so electricity used at City Hall increased 24% from 2022 to 2024, and gas decreased 8%. So it'd be interesting to see this year's gas numbers, though, because gas is generally used for heating, and if you have a couple mild winters, you won't use as much gas. Again, sometimes it's just fun to look at these graphs. So you can see on the top is 1,000 cubic feet of natural gas City Hall used. It starts to drop in June because you're not heating anything generally, and then jumps back up in November. And then the bottom graph is kilowatt hours used. And you kind of see some of the air conditioning numbers bump up in July. That's where you see that peak, and then it'll kind of drop off a little bit. All right, so looking to the future. So we did a great thing applying for and being accepted into the Consumers Program. So 2028, 48 million kilowatt hours that the city uses will come from renewable energy. The city uses about 50 million kilowatt hours. We couldn't enroll streetlights and traffic signals. So that's where you get the difference there. And that program's going to offset 27,809 metric tons of CO2e, or about 76% of our total emissions. So there you see the number at the end. Starting in 2028, that's what our greenhouse gas numbers will look like. There's always work to do. In the meantime, we can increase efficiency. And I guess I want to pitch too that increasing efficiency also has other benefits. City spends $5 to $6 million a year on utilities. Buildings are more efficient. We're running more efficiently. That number will drop. As we continue to replace outdated infrastructure, old pump houses, lift stations, things like that, almost invariably the new stuff's better than the old stuff. It'll be more efficient. So changes there will help bring our numbers down. Decarbonizing, so that's getting off natural gas and onto electricity, which can be produced renewably. The biggest struggle I have there is with the sidewalk heating system. It uses a lot of natural gas. And then efficiency. I think we can increase the number of municipal LEED buildings. LEED buildings just tend to focus on efficiency, and it's a way of kind of building with these goals in mind. Again, if there's anything, I think the continuing biodiesel program is fantastic. Excuse me. Purchasing electric vehicles will definitely help bring those vehicle emissions down, and then working on efficiency. That's kind of where we're at, what we should focus on if we're going to get to net zero. We can't just rely on the consumers program, but you saw what the impact that program is going to have, and anything that we do, any of these three things has only increased the impact of that program. And with that, I will sit down, cough, and turn it over to Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Gish, and welcome, Chris.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the invitation to speak today and talk about the recycling and curbside programs that we offer in the city of Kalamazoo and share some statistics from 2025. You'll see on the slide and maybe in front of you a snapshot of the community sustainability plan. All of these numbers I'm about to share fall into that key performance indicator from the green circular economy about expanding community recycling. So we want to just highlight that. This is a slide about the single family and some multifamily curbside pickups. These stats here represent a monthly breakdown tonnage of recycling picked up in our program. I do want to highlight this is all of the single family homes and then the multifamily or multi-unit routes that are serviced by a ASL or automated side load vehicle, so carts. And then we have one route that's a 30-yard container that's serviced twice a week over at Parkview Hills as a multi-unit. So this data set is limited to those properties. Unfortunately, right now, we don't have a great way to track data from the front end load containers at our multi-units, think overhead tips, because of the routing efficiencies that we would want our contractor to have, wherein our jurisdiction neighbors might also have multi-units that are serviced by the same provider at the exact same time or same route. Keeping that in mind, in 2025, we were able to decrease contamination incidents at the curb by 54% after our behavior intervention program, which occurred through funding with Eagle and the Recycling Partnership. The next slide is a little hectic, apologies, but it's a breakdown of some of the particulars from that grant program. We delivered the infographic cards, either postcard or fridge cling static sticker for your fridge with the accepted materials. New from last year, we added paper cups. Think about your coffee cups. I see you've got one there, as well as your fountain drink cups being eligible to go in the recycle system, whether a cart or a dumpster at home, both will go into that recycle program. The yellow item, the OOPS tag, is a direct mailer, a feedback mailer that we sent to over 1,300 households directly with a photo of their recycling materials from the tip. This is from that smart camera truck system that we have installed on the main recycle truck. And so that helped us to capture incidents of contamination and then provide feedback in real time before your next recycle service. Our top issue still remains bagged materials. That's that keep it loose tag there. So we're working to support residents in tipping their recyclables into the cart or dumpster without having it be in a trash bag or a plastic bag. It's still our number one issue. We also added 495 new carts in 2025, maintaining our top tier status in our recycle contract. So if you're familiar with the recycle agreement with Republic Services, it's tiered for our single family accounts, and we've crossed the 14,000 cart threshold, which puts us in the top tier for the remainder of our contract, which I think means we're adding value to our services for every cart that we cite from here to the end of that contract. The next slide is about our brush collection program, which runs April through October. That's serviced by Best Way Disposal. They pick up brush, yard waste material direct from the curb. It does need to be bagged or boxed or bundled, tied up with twine. So there is a slight processing demand by the residents to get this material picked up. There's actually a misprint on this slide. It should be 174 tons of material, which is an increase from 2024. And we again issued a storm cleanup protocol in the middle of this cycle. So we asked residents to place their storm cleanup materials, a lot of which are the same exact material types as this program, loose at the curb for our public services crew to collect. So that's why you might see a little bit of variance in the numbers there. Leaf collection, our public services crew run leaf collection November, December, weather permitting. In total, in 2025, we collected over 11,758 cubic yards of leaf material. That includes a little bit of cleanup from the 2024 season due to weather. I will stress, this program is weather dependent. The same people that pick up the leaves run the snow plows and the ice melt deliveries. So when a snow event occurs, we have to stop with leaf collection, and that happened Thanksgiving through New Year plus at this time. So we're committed to picking up the leaves. I've heard that it's highly likely we'll get back to that even tomorrow with the weather. I will say the bulk trash program is not recycling. All the materials go direct to the landfill. But we trended down a little bit this past year. Maybe that was because of the snow in December, but we run a quarterly curbside pickup for single-family homes for bulk trash. And then we also added 2 more drop-off days at the transfer station to bring our annual total to 6. You'll see those with the kind of smaller chunks on the graph. And then I can talk about the EPS foam collection events and speak to some of the drop-off materials. They didn't quite make it into the slideshow, but that's my fault, not yours. In 2025, we had over 2,300 city households visit the Hazardous Waste Disposal Center. That's the county facility at Lamont Avenue. So that was incidents of them taking flammable materials, hazardous materials, electronics, batteries to the county's facility. We also hosted 5 recycle drop-off events where we diverted 13 tons of EPS foam, over 30,000 pounds of electronics, and way more than 52 cubic yards of cardboard. These events, we have 4 remaining for this calendar year. We started collecting water filters at these events, and we really look forward to continuing to serve the community in that way. Additionally, in 2025, we had 2 scrap tire recycling events that were free for county residents to participate in. We collaborate with the Kalamazoo Conservation District to support those events, and we're expecting to do that again June and July this summer. That concludes my presentation. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that Justin did not.
Thank you, Mr. Broadbent. Appreciate all your efforts all throughout the year and being here to talk about them. Questions? Commissioner Wilson.
Thanks, Mayor, and thank you both for the very detailed presentation. You touched on KPIs a little bit, so I had a question on those. I understand it's impossible to measure success just off of KPIs alone, right? Have we been able to establish targets for each KPI, and if so, how have we compared? And sorry if I missed it in the presentation.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I'll do the best I can here. Yeah, so the KPIs are here. So these are the desired target trends for 2032. So you have the current condition on the left-hand column there, and then the desired trend on the right. So you can see like KPI 1, it's in progress, and then trend up. So I'd say that, we're currently hitting that KPI. With Chris's recycling numbers here at the bottom, amount of materials recycled through curbside program, it's 2,215 tons, current condition, they want to see 2,500. Depending on how you define curbside, we've blown past that. If you're talking about composting yard waste and trees, leaves, we've blown past that. If you're just talking about recycling, Chris would have to crunch some numbers, not throwing Chris under the bus, but I don't have that.
We're a little short of the 2,500 for single stream recycled materials, but all told, I think, as Justin said, yeah, if you count in the organics materials that we do pick up and recycle or compost, if you will, I think we exceed that goal, and looking forward to setting a new performance indicator.
And you guys are adjusting that annually, just based off of performance, or?
There's talk about, so now that we have, now that Chris and I are in our positions, we have folks dedicated to this work, looking at the sustainability plan. maybe doing an addendum or an update or something like that, especially as we move into Imagine Kalamazoo 2035. So, yeah, Chris and I are more than happy to blow through all these KPIs at any point. So,
All right, thanks.
thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Slaby.
Mr. Gish, you mentioned 3 scopes, but you only talked about 2. What's that third scope?
Third scope is everything else. So it depends how deep you want to go down that rabbit hole. Some folks would look at every pen that the city buys and what the carbon footprint is of every pen or nut or bolt, and they could quantify it that way. Probably the most pressing or the most easily quantifiable scope 3 the city would have is the biosolids to the landfill. In previous reports, we had that. Those numbers are pretty squishy. There's also not a lot we can do about it. You're not going to get people to stop flushing the toilet, to be kind of crass in our work. Chris and I do this quite a bit. So I left those out. So I was focusing on the emissions that the city can really control and really work on, so efficiency and electrification and those things.
Okay, thank you. And you mentioned that you don't get numbers for 2025 until May?
Correct. In May, I ask consumers, and they send me a 2,400 row Excel spreadsheet that I wade through, and I turn it into this.
Okay. I just said no. I really think that, I would have loved to see this presentation after May so we could have those 2025 numbers. Because if this is an annual thing, then we're going to wait until next year to get 2025 numbers. So maybe ideally, they can come back before next year, or just take into account, maybe we schedule it next year so we have 2025 and 2026 numbers when they present. I had a couple more questions for Chris Broadbent. So for recycling, we've talked about this where if someone has a disability or they're homebound and they can't take the cart to the curb, if there's an opportunity for a service to be provided to go to the door, correct?
Yes.
And how are we communicating that to our residents that would like to participate in that, or working with partners like Disability Network to spread the word?
That's a great question. I think this is a good opportunity to elevate that point. In our contract with Republic Services, we have that option. Again, a resident would need to opt in to that service. So for us, in order to support that, we would need a contact with 311, would be the simplest way for that to happen. They can refer to it as an assisted service or backdoor service account, and we can work to set that up with the hauler or contractor.
So as of right now, do we have any information about that on the website where one would sign up for recycling, and or do we have that script in place for 311 as part of the larger recycling script if someone calls?
I will have to confirm on the webpage. Great point. I do know the script is in place for 311 to create and forward those requests.
Great. And then brush pickup. So surprisingly, that was a thing on when I was knocking on doors this summer. People brought up a lot of just confusion about what's accepted, what's not. I know that there's text on the website describing what you should do at the curb. Is there any additional outreach efforts we do, whether it's video, or do people attend neighborhood association meetings to kind of talk about it, or do we have it in the works, some efforts to do more outreach around that to raise awareness?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I would say we can never do enough communicating or outreach to support residents in being successful at the curb. We have worked with neighborhood associations in the past, but obviously we can always improve.
Great. Last question, because I want to follow up on Commissioner Wilson's wonderful questions about KPIs. So quick note, under healthy prepared community, I think we're way past 25%. Because Director Baker has presented a couple times now about the percentage of identified non-copper lines replaced in the drinking water. So just wanted to note that. Maybe that can be updated just if you guys use this presentation elsewhere. And then just curious about who chooses these targets? And is this target taking us to an ultimate goal, either outlined in the community sustainability plan or elsewhere in the city, for us to understand like what we are on track to make, or are these our final targets? And again, who decides those? What goes into deciding that?
This, you did, the commission, not you in particular, but this is what the commission approved, and this is what's in the sustainability plan.
Okay, so it's outlined there, these are the targets for 2032, and ideally at 2032, we would be updating the community sustainability plan?
If not sooner, yeah. So with Imagine Kalamazoo 2035 coming up, and again, Chris and I being in our positions, there's just more time available, and I guess, for lack of a better word, with Chris and I, expertise to kind of push some of this stuff forward.
Okay, and sorry, one more question because of just this recent follow-up on KPIs. So I know that there's some priorities set out in the community sustainability plan on what we want to focus on because there's so many different projects under these goals. So I understand, we can't do everything every day. As we work towards meeting these targets for these specific objectives, what is the conversation around all the other things in the community sustainability plan? I know this doesn't cover all the amazing work that you guys do every day. So you could probably spend another hour talking about the different workshops and conversations you have. But, I just think about like public transit. We no longer have a public transit department, but public transit is in the community sustainability plan. And I just think about other things that are in there that are pretty big, air quality, et cetera. And so are those things not set up with targets that we're working towards right now? Are those things that we carry over to a new community sustainability plan when it's time to update? How do we juggle all of these things and how we invest in which ones we focus on now and into the future?
Yeah, so these are the only KPIs that we have. He said there's plenty of other stuff, so if you go through these actions and things like that. There's a lot in that question. Chris and I work on all these things daily. Everything that we do is tied back to the sustainability plan. I don't know. Yeah, those are the only KPIs. So that's why I focused on those. Everything else, Chris and I are working on. More someone at the city is.
Okay, great. So just clarify the community that's watching, these are the only quantitative KPIs that are laid out in the community sustainability plan, which is why these are the ones that we're using.
This and net zero, yeah.
Yeah,
yep.
Okay. Well, I'm so thankful we have a sustainability planner and a solid waste coordinator on board now after creating the community sustainability plan. So it'll be exciting to have these roles in place now for the update, because I think you guys, or depending on who's in the role, but hopefully you guys are there to provide tremendous value into updating this with more KPIs. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Slaby. Commissioner Cradle.
Thank you, Mayor. Wanted to give you both some kudos. You probably would get a gold star for the number of the Design At meetings that you both have been at, and I also saw you at the Building Blocks kickoff dinner, so thank you for all the nights that you've been committing to this work. For those of you who have not been to a Design At meeting, it's kind of cool. They have recyclable bags that they give out, and including the communication, the recyclable bags that help people take the recyclables to their bin have graphics on the side that remind people about what they can use and not use. But I'm especially appreciative that they're small, and my 5-year-old now, he has no excuse why he can't take out the recycling. So thank you for making it manageable for a 5-year-old. Had a couple questions for you. So one of the questions I frequently hear from folks, and I know the answer to this, but I think it's helpful for the public to hear. You talked about basically our fuel usage on our vehicles going up a bit, and oftentimes if you pass a public safety vehicle, you will hear that vehicle running at all times. And so oftentimes I will hear from people, well, that just seems like such a colossal waste. You have like a sustainability plan, but then you have these public safety vehicles that just run nonstop. Can you speak to that a little bit and share with folks why that is?
Yeah, very broadly, so the city has a no idling policy, but some vehicles are exempt. Public safety vehicles are one of those because, they run different types of machinery, equipment, electronics, so they need to be running. So that's why you might see one of those running, yeah.
And then I know we have a very limited use of EV vehicles that we've kind of stepped in a little bit with as a city, some I believe with public services, and then if I'm not mistaken, a couple with public safety. Can you speak a little bit about if there have been any learnings or how that's going?
Yeah, so we have two EV pickups. Anecdotally, folks who drive them love them. Haven't, all the things that you might hear that people worry about with EVs. They don't work in the winter or you get stranded somewhere. None of that has happened. So yeah, that's one of the KPIs too. Get to 100 EVs by 2032.
And then you also mentioned about the streetlights and about how those have improved efficiency, I think 22%. And I was just curious, how far along are we in terms of replacement all efficient traffic lights and signals and those sort of things? Do you happen to know?
Nope, I would punt that one. I just see the amount that we use, or the amount of energy that we use. I don't know where we're at, and it's kind of a strange relationship too. With consumers tends to maintain those. I don't know if it's worth Director Baker coming up here, but
it's okay.
Yeah.
Maybe ask him after the meeting as well. But I was just curious. That's impressive reduction, and I'm curious to see how far along or how much replacement we had to do to achieve that 22%. And then for that KPI number 1, you talked about the measure of pedestrians, cyclists versus vehicles as well. Can you you mentioned that you get that, I think, from Google?
Yes. Yeah.
And can you speak a little bit about how they calculate that or figure that out?
Yeah, you sign it over to them.
Yeah, exactly.
They provide it to me.
Yes. So I'm assuming it's mostly just like cell phone data that's kind of almost like a Placer AI type scenario.
Yeah, and they did an update for 2024. I don't know if they're going to continue this program, but every time I see new bits of data from somewhere, it's pretty interesting. And they understand that a lot of this data is really hard to quantify or just to capture, from someone like, working, in the city government here. So it's provided to us kind of at aggregate scale, and it's pretty interesting. I think it's telling.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cradle. Commissioner Hess, they'll come back.
Sure.
Thanks.
So you heard our commenter pre-meeting talking about the motion sensor streetlights. Any possibilities there? What would it do to add those, and what would they do to help towards sustainability numbers?
Yeah, so that would be, again, probably more consumers as they maintain the streetlights. Again, some of that stuff, I know they're motion sensing. With sustainability, you can almost never just make one decision without affecting something else. Folks might worry about safety, with streetlights coming off. I think with the safety of birds, so we talked about migration. I think safety of birds overall, the number one killer of birds in the city is domestic cats, not the city in the United States, and it's not even close to window collisions, which are the second killer of birds. So there's other things we can do too. I think that, changing the streetlights, again, there's other reasons too, is the student suggested, that it would decrease energy use. Probably be a conversation with consumers, but I'm happy to be in the room or try to figure something like that out.
Cool, thank you. So the crosstown is being renovated. And so I know there are certain things that you're doing there to make that more energy efficient, and that PS2 is LEED certified. And I just wonder if Crosstown will be LEED after this renovation.
That I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
So what initiatives are you using to increase the sustainability of that building?
You haven't been too close to that project.
Oh, okay. No solar?
All right, so here's one thing. Yeah, so the city did apply for and received a $48,000 grant to install solar in the carport, but with the Michigan House pulled back the funding, that was one of the grants that we lost.
Oh, man. Okay. Yeah, I know that we're doing our best to make that sustainable. And I know we talk about putting information out about recycling. It is in this view. I love it when View from the Curb comes. I love it. I read it cover to cover. Is that you, Chris, that puts that together?
No, the communications team, I believe Mike Smith and Neil Conway and Amanda Wood put that publication together. We've got another one coming out mid-March for spring-summer 2026.
Awesome.
So you should be seeing that direct mail inside the City View newsletter to all the addresses in the city mid-March.
That's a wonderful piece of information that comes out. Thank you for that. And I just have to tell you, being at those foam collection events on those Saturdays is more like a party. It's a wonder. You've done great things with those events. Not only do you have electronics and paper shredding, which I took advantage of this weekend as well, you wouldn't believe the electronics that come. I mean, computers from 1990. I mean, it really is. People are having these things that are piling up in your basement. What a great way to recycle and not put them in the landfill. I'm really grateful to you for continuing that program, and I hope we can continue it in a much bigger and better way in the future. So the styrofoam is incredible. And having been one of the people that takes the addresses of the people who are coming to recycle, it is not just city people. Like, people are coming from all over the county to do this. Obviously, there's a need in the county, and are we working at all with the county to increase our reach?
Yeah, thank you for that feedback. We are definitely in communication and collaboration with the county on this particular event and much of these material types. So for our residents, they can take electronics to the household hazardous waste facility or bring them to our collection events, opening up another pathway. Obviously, that both activities require the resident to bring their material someplace else, which is not always an option for everyone, so we're exploring ways to break that barrier down. And the county was recently in support of a grant proposal that we submitted to Michigan Eagle, and they wrote a letter of support that was very well received on the EPS foam number 6 polystyrene material. So we're looking to find out from the grantors if they approve of our project for that material. So we're in constant communication, and I think I just heard you say we could get live music at the next drop-off events, make it
Oh, did I say that? I think that's a great idea. I'm going to ask Chief Operating Officer Laura Lamb to be the DJ good. On that one. And just lastly, Justin, I know that you're the liaison and you work with Environmental Concerns Committee. They're obviously aware of these things. Are you going to give this presentation to the ECC and maybe take this moment to recruit members for that committee if anyone's listening?
Yep. Yeah. So I'll be talking about this with ECC on Wednesday. And then we have open spots. I believe there's 3. We've had some applicants come in, but yeah, generally always looking for applicants to serve on the ECC if anyone wants to get involved in some of this work, kind of learn the ins and outs of sustainability at the municipal level.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. Commissioner Slaby.
Thank you. Speaking of recycling, I forgot to mention this. So, in May 2025, the city was able to start working with Next Cycle, and I believe you guys were looking at the feasibility of a super recycling center. So how's that been going? Is the process over now with that? Could you share a little bit? I was just surprised it wasn't in the presentation.
Yeah, happy to talk about that. We participated in the Next Cycle Business Accelerator through Michigan Eagle, and it's kind of like a Shark Tank meets consultation meets coaching for your idea or project. So it was a 6-month window where we met regularly with coaches from RRS, Recycling Resources Systems, consulting organization that now consults and contracts with Eagle. And we were one of 16 groups that were awarded a $5,000 harvest grant, which I believe the city commission and city managers had approved for us to receive. So we've got a little bit of money working towards our project. And the next steps for us was applying for that grant through Michigan Eagle, the recycling infrastructure grant. So we applied for a couple of program continuances on the software side, the camera system that tracks the single-family home tips in the cart, as well as some technology to help us audit the multifamily units that I spoke of, the front-end load containers, and then some equipment to help us process this expanded polystyrene foam material. So we'll find out in September about that.
Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments, commissioners? All right, seeing no one else, just thank you, Mr. Gish and Mr. Broadbent, for all of the work you do on this.
Thank you.
And coming and talking to us about it. Manager Hankins, anything more for the good of the order this evening?
No, sir, not at this time.
Thank you. Now, on our agenda for this, we're down to commissioner comments. This is an opportunity for commissioners to make comments on any topic. However, just as a reminder, there's also a commissioner comment time at the end of our 7 o'clock business meeting. Any commissioner comments? Commissioner Hess.
I'll make a comment, Mayor. I just really want to shout out and thank both Justin and Chris for all of the work that they've been doing. I have noticed in my own personal household with the increase of recycling opportunities from EPS foam and electronics and paper shredding that, and then also with my cart full, my cart was full today of recyclables. Our garbage cart has 2 little bags in the bottom of it. So like, I feel like if all the households were able to increase their recycling, increase their composting, and we would have so much less that goes to the landfills, which are rapidly decreasing. So thank you for your work. Just appreciate you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. Commissioner Cradle.
Thank you, Mayor. Just really quick, I just wanted to say to Jamie, Justin, and Chris, I really appreciate when you're here presenting like this, because to me, you see very evidently the people who work for the city are incredibly passionate, incredibly knowledgeable, and that really care about the work that we're doing. And it's really refreshing to see that and to hear that. And it means a lot that people like y'all decide to work at places like the city of Kalamazoo to really move us forward with a lot of these really important issues that we're facing as a community and a world. So thank you.
Other comments, commissioners? All right, seeing no other comments, just a reminder, our business meeting starts this evening at 7, a little over half an hour. We'll be back for that. Several agenda items on our consent agenda and regular agenda this evening. We are adjourned.
You don't want to stay.